Well, after the top diplomats, that is the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, left Haiti over the weekend, there were statements that were released by Ecuador and the US regarding the future of the MSS mission in Haiti. They said that there is a need to transform the MSS mission to be a UN mission. But right now, that is a UN-backed mission, meaning that it is not a UN mission but has the blessings of the UN. They want to transform it to be a fully UN mission, and the specific reason is because of the costs involved. We know that these MSS forces are supposed to spend about 600 million in 1 year, and this money was to come from the US and Canada. And some bit of financing will come from other well-wishing countries like France. And the boots on the ground will be contributed by countries like Benin, Chad, Bangladesh, Kenya being the lead, Bahamas, Jamaica, Barbados, and the neighboring countries, part of CARICOM, that is the Caribbean Community. So there were structures and frameworks put in place of who is supposed to do what, but it seems like the financing part has not been successful. Just the other day, news was all over about the delayed pay of the MSS forces in Haiti. Well, that means that the US has not really fully given the amount of money that is supposed to be given. Of all that amount that is supposed to be given, the UN was supposed to contribute $85 million, and so far the UN has made good in its pledge and has contributed $68 million on that 85 pledge. But the bulk of the money is not yet contributed by the countries that are supposed to contribute. Well, they want now to pass that responsibility to be a UN mission. When it is a UN mission, of course, there are different channels. But now that will have to take the process back to where it started, at the UNSC. Because if it is a UN mission, it has to go through the channels as it's supposed to go. And that means that there will be an announcement at the United Nations Security Council. The countries that are sitting at the United Nations Security Council, the permanent and non-permanent, will have to vote whether to approve of that mission or not. If they approve of the mission, then there are a lot of bureaucracies that will have to be passed. And by the way, just approving the mission will take a lot of time. And then asking countries that would like to volunteer now that they should come up and volunteer, because Kenya is not in a UN mission in Haiti. Kenya will have to reconsider if it needs to stay in Haiti now that it has gotten to understand what is happening in Haiti. Kenya will have to make that decision. Other countries that have already pledged also will have to make the decision whether they would like to stay or not. So the mere fact that we are taking it back to the UN is the time that Haiti doesn't have. Currently, the situation is really bad in Haiti. 80% of Port-au-Prince is controlled by gangs, meaning that there is no freedom of movement, there is no freedom of expression. Literally, Haiti doesn't have leaders because elections were held a long time ago and elections have not been held so far. Any more day that we are extending for the people of Haiti not to get leaders, not to get their representatives, not to get facilities is an injustice to the people of Haiti. There is a need to factor all this before any decision is made. And we have to go back and understand UN missions that have taken place in Haiti. One famous UN mission that took place in Haiti was the one that ended in 2017. Well, this UN mission had a lot of backlash from Haiti and from around the world because of the loss of lives that it led. The UN mission in Haiti, the MINUSTA mission, led to the loss of lives of 10,000 Haitians because of a cholera outbreak that took place when the sewage was released to drinking water. Many people lost their lives because of the UN mission. Now, the UN mission is unpopular in Haiti. Many people see the UN as occupiers of Haiti and that they really do not have faith in the restoration of their normal life in Haiti. And that tells you a lot, because if the public does not have faith in the Calvary, there is no need to have that Calvary at all. Because if the public will see the UN as occupiers, that will further spur people to even get more involved in gang-related activities. So there is no need at all for Haiti to go back to gangs. There is no need at all for Haiti to be further disintegrated by imposing the UN mission to them. So far, the Kenyan-led mission has been working to restore Haiti. We have heard of the hospital that has been restored. We have heard of the port that has been restored. We have heard of different amenities, different places, and even the Secretary of State himself came out and said that business has started to grow back in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince, and that is an important feat. What was missing were the resources to facilitate the Kenyans to go into deeper gang-infested areas and root out these gangs, as well as the financial support that is yet to be fully facilitated. In any peacekeeping mission, the very first thing is to win the hearts of the people who you are going to protect. And that has been happening. Kenya has been employing that tactic everywhere it has gone, even in our country. In the northern part, the Kenya police is very much involved in restoring schools and taking critical services to communities in the north. If you look at the strategy that the KDF is using in Somalia, they are treating people. They are making temporary hospitals to treat people, to get their trust so that they can give more information to the police or to the KDF so that they can root out the people who are terrorizing residents in that particular area. So if the UN doesn't have that public support, then it will be very, very difficult for the UN to even achieve a single objective that they want to achieve in Haiti. The Kenya-led mission is trying as much as possible right now to, one, reach out to the people of Haiti. They are personally speaking out. They are personally having to engage with Haitians to know them, to know the culture, and to understand them. They are employing all tactics to make sure that they win their hearts first, and then after that, they will now engage the gangs tactfully to make sure that there is minimal loss of lives. So that is the strategy that should be used in any peacekeeping mission. Well, in areas, and we can take, for example, in areas where the UN has not gained trust of the public, you'll find that the mission is an ongoing mission that doesn't have fruits of success. And that example you can give with the DRC Congo. The longest UN mission ever is the DRC Congo. And that mission has stayed there with very minimal results because right now the people in DRC Congo do not trust the UN. They're saying that the UN went to DRC and are not doing anything. And to be very, very frank, I am not saying that the UN missions do not yield results. They have yielded results in Eritrea. They have yielded results in Yugoslavia, in different countries across the world, in different continents. The UN missions have yielded results. But in this particular case, in Haiti, the UN has not succeeded. And the UN is not the framework to put in Haiti at this moment. And that is why these countries had a sit down and discussed to have a different kind of a mission whereby it will be led by an African country and supported by a multinational force where it will have the authority of the international community. And that was the best framework to work for this reason because, as you can see, the gangs subsided in their activity and the public were receptive of the Kenyans who went to assist the Haitians. Well, that aside, it is also very important to listen to the Haitian story and the Haitian people, to be very, very critical and listen to what they need and what they want. Well, we can be here discussing and analyzing what is happening in Haiti. The Haitian people have the last say of what they want their country to be. Because as I started by saying, the public is very important in any mission. If the public accepts you, the results are very easy to get. But if the public doesn't have that trust with you, then the results are very, very difficult to achieve. And this is a special case because Haiti doesn't have representatives, doesn't have democratically elected representatives. Now that is the main challenge, and that is what now can separate Congo and Haiti. Because if you don't have representatives, if you don't have a president that has been chosen by the people, that has that voice of the people, it is quite difficult for one to either impose a mission that will create that sustainable peace in that country. Because people will say that this president does not have the will of the people because no one elected them. So that is the special case of Haiti, where there is no one single person who will come out and say that this is the resolve of the people, that this is what the people want, and that is the direction that people have to go. So that is very important, and that is why it is critical for this mission to ensure that they create an environment where Haiti can go to the ballot and elect its leaders. And that will have to be done through a peaceful nation, because people cannot go to the ballot while someone is holding their guns on their backs. That will not be an election, because people will be coerced, others will fear even to get out of their houses to go and vote. People who have dissenting voices will fear to raise their voices, and that will not be democracy. At the end of the day, we will not achieve the will of the people. Therefore, it is very important for an honest conversation inside Haiti by the people of Haiti to discuss what they need forward for their country, whether they need an internal reorganization, or they need an election immediately, or they need other forces to leave their country and they sort themselves out. I don't know how that can happen, but the people will have the last say if they really want change or not.